I go over kind of my product review of a few different pieces of snowboard equipment that I got for this year. It's been a couple years since I've been snowboarding, and sorry, my dogs are underneath. They're really friendly right now. Just got back from the park, but I want to kind of go over and share some details as to what I thought some of the gear, especially from my experience, and for each person that's riding the equipment. They'll have a little bit of different takeaway, but I just want to share what my takeaways were and maybe some tips and tricks that will help the next person going up to ride if they're using any of the equipment that I am. I ski and snowboard, and my last board, the green board behind me, is like a new Ultra Genetics. I think it's a 162 from many years ago, and that just became too soft, so it's time to replace it. And I want to get back to riding again. I have a little bit more time on my hands on the weekends with my new role, and so this year I got the following equipment. So this is a Jones Ultra Mountain Twin in a 159 wide, and I was looking at quite a few different boards for this season, and obviously there's so many different boards now in the industry that there's just a ton of different options for people that are going back up to ride or want to buy a new piece of equipment. And I was going for more of that quiver of one kind of board, so a board that could handle all styles of riding on the mountain. For the most part, I don't do much parks and jumps. I don't think it's my age. I think it's just my personality and style. The way I attack and ride isn't oriented towards that. I think it's just a comfort level. But this board is perfectly capable of it. But I wasn't aiming towards a board that's more freestyle. So I'm more of a free rider, and I tend to bomb. So I always look for a board that's a little stiffer, and usually one that's wide. And I'll kind of get into why that is here in a second and kind of go over some takeaways for me. But the three pieces of equipment that I'll be talking about are the Jones Ultra Mountain Twin, the snowboard, the now dry binding, which is what I got strapped on this bad boy, and then a Solomon Malamute boot that I got for 2021. And so I replaced all my gear. My old bindings, they were functional, but they weren't like keeping up with the same level that the board was going to be. So I thought it was time to replace those as well. And the ratchets on them were stripping. They weren't grabbing hold. I'd sometimes have to, especially when it was like a heavy snow day, the powder was getting stuck on the binding ratchet. It wasn't clamping down and holding. Sometimes I'd have to re-ratchet during a run, and it was time to replace them for that reason. Again, I tend to be a little bit more aggressive in my riding style, and I need to feel very secure and locked in. And if I have any movement in my equipment, it bothers me when I'm riding. Might be a personal thing, but I tend to push the equipment to at least to some extent, and so I want to feel like it's going to respond when I need to. And then again, the Solomon boots. I had my last pair of boots were a Solomon pair as well. I forgot the model, but they were from a decade ago, and they're probably not currently still being run. But the Malamute was a very stiff boot, and I'll kind of talk about my experience with that from snowboarding before. So this was my real first experience riding a very, on the flex rating, Solomon Malamute is a very stiff boot. My last pair of Solomon boots were probably a mid-flex, and I love them. They were very comfortable to walk in. I could, even after snowboarding for a full day, I could just hang out next to a fireplace or get a beer or whatever and hang out and kick back in those boots, and never had any foot pain whatsoever. And I heard a lot of horror stories about people with boots, snowboard and ski boots. I know ski boots were notoriously uncomfortable, but snowboard boots, I heard a lot of people talking about how uncomfortable snowboard boots were. And I didn't realize that people had such widely different experiences than I did, just because I found a boot previously that really was a good match for my foot. And everyone's feet are shaped differently. I'm not going to go too much into the shape of that, but I'll talk in general terms what my takeaways were when I get to the boots. But first, we'll start with the board. So the Jones Ultra Mountain Twin 159 wide. Why wide? I have a size 13 shoe size. My boot size is a size 12. So this is a Solomon Malamute. It's a size 12. And what my main thing was when I was riding these is I needed to make sure that, got dirt on my table now, it was going to sit on the board and not ride over the edge. So I didn't want toe drag. So I have a very large foot. I don't feel like I have a large foot. I just have a larger foot for snowboarding. I guess the average person that snowboards has a smaller foot than I do. I'm not overly a large person. I'm 6 foot and right around 190 to 200, depending on what my eating habits are, and exercise and all that stuff. So that's pretty much where I'm at. I'm 6 foot, somewhere between 190 and 200, depending on the season and whatnot. And I wear a size 13 shoe, but I buy snowboard boots in size 12 because I try to downsize. And all the technology now in the boots allows the liners and the way that they're designed and engineered is you can actually downsize a little bit and not feel like you're cramped up in the boots. So they have pretty good economy towards their materials and how they shape the liners and the soles of the I guess they call it the last of the boots in general now, so that I don't have to actually wear a size 13 and feel comfortable in a boot. I will say it's not like ski equipment isn't meant, or snowboard equipment isn't meant to be like, hang out in it for 24/7, 365. It's meant for more function. At least that's my take. I grew up a skier, so my takeaway from equipment side of things is that your equipment is going to be somewhat uncomfortable, and not that it should be, but it's like comfort isn't always a guarantee. Let me put it that way. I think a lot of skiers especially know this, is that a lot of times with your boots, you'll have to unclasp them or unbuckle them during different parts of the day, especially if you ever see a skier that's actually going to walk anywhere or go to get lunch, at a shack or whatnot during the middle of the day. They're always going to unbuckle their equipment to walk because it's really uncomfortable to walk in those things when they're fully ratcheted down. And that's kind of what I'm going to get to when I talk about these things. But why did I go for a wide board? It's because I have big feet for snowboarding, apparently. And if you don't get a wide board, I won't say it'll impact your riding. I've ridden on narrower waist boards before with size 12 boots and haven't had a major issue with it. I've ridden some demo equipment from like LibTech and such way back when, and I actually liked them a lot, but they did have a narrower waist. This one is somewhere in between. I don't have the exact specs on me right now, but I'll probably post them in my videos that I cut from this and kind of show links of the actual dimensions and where you see information for the boards, the bindings, and the boots. But it was safer for me to go for a wider board, and also just because I do tend to ride really fast. A wider board tends to be a little bit more stable on carve, and at least for me and my size and dimensions and the way I ride. So personally, I'm a little bit more comfortable on a little bit of a wider board, and I don't feel like I'm riding on a toothpick. And there's more surface area under the underfoot that allows me to kind of get on edge, hold an edge, and lean over and really drive my cars. So for me, I actually grew up on kind of a fat bob style board. It wasn't a fat bob. It was a different style board, but it was made by K2. And I actually liked it a lot. And it was just a stiff board, basically a plank. I had no flex in it whatsoever. And it was very similar to like a fat bob. And I liked it a lot. I think it was called like a K2 Ultra Wide at the time. This was like 15 years ago. And for a long time, I didn't really give the board as much credit as to how much I liked riding it compared to what I rode afterwards. And I kind of underserved how much I love that board. But it wasn't fancy, anything like that, but it was just very functional, and I really enjoyed it. And I could really lay over my cars and almost get really horizontal, especially on my toe side edge, which I lean more toe side. And my kind of what is my power turn? My power turn for myself, or whatever you want to describe it as. I'm very comfortable laying over on my toe side edge. My toe side edge is my strong kind of. If I have a stronger one, it's definitely toe side. My heel side, I don't. Maybe it's my technique, whatever it may be, but I'm not as strong on my heel side edge for whatever reason. I know a lot of people get scared laying on their toe. What I've heard from other videos or just talking to people is that they have a hard time snowboarding on their toe side edge. But for me, I'm the exact opposite. I can really drive my toe side edge, and I have much more comfort and kind of responsiveness if I ever need to pretty much do anything and reliably turn on a dime. Usually toe side is my choice depending on the terrain. All right, anyways, the board. So the Ultra Mountain Twin Wide 159. I usually ride bigger boards. I usually ride a 162 to 163. That's usually my board size. I decided this year to actually downsize and go towards this 159. And why I did that was I was trying to actually be a little bit more playful and try to break some of my habits, which is on a lot of runs I can get into a habit of just making a few turns and bomb the run. While a lot of other people are making 7 plus, 15 plus turns on a run and really doing wide carves, kind of snaking the terrain and doing those kind of things. Oftentimes I don't do that, and I can usually make a couple long kind of snake turns, but they're more arrowed down the hill, and I don't really carve side to side or lateral. I'm carving more vertical up and down the terrain, unless it's a very double black or sheet of ice or something like that. Steep powdery moguls, and you have to make a lot more turns to be concise. But if it's just a blue groomer, usually I can just bomb those, and I'm very vertical in the way I attack the runs. But I was trying to be a little bit more playful this year. I wanted to get into some tree skiing. Downsides of a shorter length with the 159 is there's not going to be as much dominance in powder. So I'll probably have to really move these bindings back as far as I can if it's a powdery day or heavy snow. It is a little different. It's only 3 centimeters. It wouldn't seem like it's that much, but on the nose, I just don't have as much board up front, up here in front of me. That's going to be riding up and floating powder. So I currently have it mounted even. The terrain when I was riding at Kirkwood, that's why I have the Kirkwood background for this video and content, is that's where I rode. So the first day I rode this winter was at Kirkwood yesterday. Had a great day. I'm really sore, but I haven't been on the mountain for a couple of years. I had been really busy with work and didn't have a whole lot. I was working 6 days a week, 60-hour weeks for a long, long time. And now I actually have some time to actually enjoy some of the recreational activities in Tahoe. So I'm really excited about that. And so I got a pass this year. I bought the Epic Pass. So currently I can ride Kirkwood, which is the southernmost resort in Lake Tahoe. It's a great place to ski or snowboard. It's more of a, it's not as common or well-known terrain or resort as a lot of other locations in Tahoe. Squaw Valley and North Star and mainly Heavenly are probably the 3 ones that most tourists or people that are not from the Tahoe area would know about. But there's about 8 to 15, I don't know the exact quantity, probably 8 to 12 different resorts up here, involve various different varieties. Some of my favorites are Alpine Meadows, Kirkwood. I like Squaw. Heavenly I've started taking more of a liking to, but Kirkwood actually does get annually the most snowfall. So pretty much no matter what year it is, Kirkwood is always getting the most snow. It is not the largest of a ski resort. It doesn't have as much terrain as others. It's bigger than what's showing on the photo here. It wraps around, has a backside. It's a really fun place to snowboard. They have a really nice snow park if you like to do jumps and different terrain obstacles, those kind of things. Is known for that. I personally do small ones, but I don't do the big stuff. A little scaredy cat when it comes to that. But yeah, so anyways, why the Ultra Mountain Twin from Jones? I've never ridden a Jones board before, so I took this on I read a lot of reviews on evo.com, and Backcountry, I think is the other website, and a few other different websites. And there's some folks, I think I'll give a shout out to the house.com boards, and it was good. And a lot of it wasn't on 2021 boards. It was like the Jones Ultra Mountain Twin in the 2020 or 2019. And but just listening to what they thought of the equipment in general got me comfortable with the Jones. But I was actually looking at the Salomon Assassin Pro, this one, but the other 2 I was looking at were the Yes Pick Your Line, PYL. That one had really good reviews, and I think it had a unique kind of a dampening and kind of turn engagement behind somewhere in the rear I want to say of your board next to your back binding, and that really helped you bite in. And I heard a lot of good stuff with that for a carving board. That was stiff flex, and I'm partial to GNU. Again, the green board behind me in LibTech. I was really looking at Travis Rice boards. I wrote a Travis Rice demo board many years ago and loved it. So I was really close to doing the Travis Rice Pro Model board again from, I can't remember if it was from GNU or LibTech. I think he might do both, but I'll have to double check on that. But I do like GNU, and I'll talk about what GNU here in a second, or right now, and what's changed since I last have purchased any kind of snow equipment. So GNU came up with apparently an edge technology on ski sport equipment. And it's not going to show up in this image too much because I'm too close up to the photo. And farther I get away, it's not going to really be apparent, but you're not gonna be able to see it right now. But my old snowboard, like the green one behind me, there you go, is more of an hourglass shape. So the edge of in the board itself, the way it contours and shapes down, is really wider tip and tail and narrower in the waist of the board, and that's to help you make that crescent moon kind of carve when you're going down the mountain. That's really standard. It's like more of that parabolic technology in skis that came out many years ago. And the snowboards are typically have there's many different dimensions, and I won't get into them all. I'm not a professional regarding that in the engineering side, but a lot of boards have a slight taper. They're wider up top in the nose for powder, and a little narrower in the tail, and that's to help you sink your tail in powder and help you float on the tip to make sure you're kind of like a boat riding through water. And that's a lot of the technology many of the boards have, is that you're going to be, and skis, wider in the tip up top, driving forward, and narrower in the tail, and that's to make you sink and kind of float through it. So that way your tip doesn't sink underneath the snow and then faceplant. So the difference with this one isn't necessarily the dimensions of the board itself compared to my green GNU behind me. It's actually the edge technology. And Jones purchased or rented they pay like a licensing fee to GNU, who came out with the technology. And GNU calls it a serrated knife technology. And you can read about it on their website. It's really interesting stuff. It's probably been out for a few years now. I'm not sure exactly when they copyrighted it and started putting it into their modern boards. I think it's been out for 3 or 4 or 5 years now. But that green board is the board I rode for a long time. And I actually had another Rosignol board that I had purchased since then, but I just sold it on Facebook Marketplace, oddly enough. It is a little small freestyle board. And for my riding, I liked it for riding in moguls, but besides that, I really just took a liking to more free riding than I do freestyle stuff. And on a snowboard in general, I try to stay away from moguls unless I have to, or else, some people I'm riding with want to go through them, and I can get down them and I can ride through them fine. But it takes a lot of the energy out of me, and personally, I just like to enjoy the mountain. I'll do like 1 or 2 mogul runs that are double lakhs a day at most, but typically it just saps my strength and my energy. And then I start noticing my energy starts fading. I start to get kind of lazy habits later on. So if I'm going to do one, I usually try to do one before noon, and it's just 1 or 2 a day, and that's about it. But anyways, so this has a serrated knife technology on the edges, and what it does is it has like contours or waves, and it's meant to bite in. So it has different, like I think this has 5 or 7 different contact points that poke out. So it's not just a linear edge now going down your board; it's actually a wavy edge. And it's kind of hard to describe. It's not wavy the whole time like that. It's more, you have some points that jut out and go boop, and that helps you get contact where the board is going to be making contact where you're driving the board. So as I engage a turn and like pivot, the board's going to stick out, and it has a little bit of a wider spot in certain points on the board where it's going to make contact and really put pressure and drive and catch. And what it's really meant for, apparently, from my studying up on it, is in less ideal conditions. So if you're riding on ice, hard pack, those kind of things, it's meant to really bite in and hold your board steady so you're not slipping out. And a lot of tapered equipment, tapered boards and skis, will kind of fishtail. So when you're going into a run and they're tapered in the tail of the board of the ski, and you engage your turn, it's really wide up front, again on the tip, and then narrower on the waist and the tail. And when you go to turn, you can wash out. So what they started doing it with this serrated edge technology is really put some different points that stick out, again, up front, in the middle, and also down lower on your rear binding. And that helps you actually bite in and grab that grip and then hold your edge throughout your turn all the way through. And I found that to be really nice. It wasn't an icy day, but I'll be honest. So talking about the pros of the board, sticking with the edge technology for the time being, I did not slip at all. So this board was locked in, absolutely locked in. I didn't have a problem at all whatsoever. It wasn't an icy day. It was actually like spring conditions. Kind of talking to some of the chairlift operators when I was going up and down. And I was wearing a snowboard jacket, but really I should have just thrown it in my backpack. I like opened up all the vents on my jacket and the armpit vents, and then the pant vents that I had, and I was still sweating. And I overheat though when I'm snowboarding. A lot of times I don't even wear thermal. I just wear like my normal stuff that I wear in my pants on a given day. I don't wear. I've never worn since I was like a kid leg thermals. I couldn't even imagine doing so. I know a lot of people swear by them, but I overheat. So to each their own. Hey, be comfortable, whatever you want to do. But I don't like sweating when I'm on the mountain because that sweat starts to get really cold once it's inside your pants or inside your jacket. So I try to stay pretty cool. And if anything, on a really windy, cold chill day, my hands will sometimes get cold. And then that's about it. Sometimes my face, if it's like hitting zero and massive wind, that can get cold. But for the most part, I overheat. Most of the runs, I'm taking my gloves off when I get down to the bottom, and then I ride up the chair at least halfway with my gloves off. And I think it was low 40s yesterday and no wind, and the sun was out, so it's full coverage. And it can get colder up on the mountain and elevation when the sun's kind of clouded over, but it's mostly a really sunny day. So the snow conditions were very springy and mostly groomed, but there's some. I didn't get to the resort until on the hill until about 11. So it was about a little under a 2 hour drive for me, and I took my time to get there. I was really just prepping all my equipment and taking my time. And I knew I was going to do a ton of hours. I rode for about 3.5 hours, and then I was done a little bit before 3 o'clock. But it was a great day on the mountain at Kirkwood. So props to Kirkwood. It was great terrain. Some things that were different, and I'll get back to the board here in a second, but you did have to wear a mask. So I just want to notate that before, if anyone goes up. You have to make a reservation at Kirkwood and also at Heavenly, where I have the pass. I think most of the North Lake Tahoe resorts, or just Lake Tahoe resorts in general, you have to do two things: get a reservation prior to your visit, or else they won't let you on the mountain that day, and you have to wear some form of a mask. I wore a neck gaiter, and I never wear those. I think when I was a little kid, my dad got me one of those kind of neoprene kind of masks for skiing, and it had like a little nose slit so you can breathe out of your nose. And that's the last time I've really worn one. Was like when I was, I don't know, 10 or 13 years old. But I was wearing one of those neck gaiters. I bought one just so I could get on the mountain because it was required. And I was overheating nonstop. I don't like things on my neck, around me. I just don't ever wear turtlenecks. I overheat. A hoodie is about the most I'll ever wear. And otherwise, I just don't like stuff hanging on me. I start to overheat. I don't like the weight of it. So I also don't wear a helmet. But if I ever start jumping, I probably would. But I got to figure that out because I'm going to be using a GoPro soon. So I bought this little kind of showing it without glare. But so I have a GoPro Max I just bought. So I'm planning on that. I'm waiting on my SD card to arrive, and then I'll start filming my days on the hill. But I didn't get this like kind of minor or like head strap gear, and I'll mount it that way. I'm figuring less weight. The helmet, when I tried it on, I actually bought one, got it from Amazon for like $50. But that bothered me too. I don't like the weight of it on my head. I think you'll get used to it, but with the goggles, the helmet, all this crap, neck gaiter, it's too much. So to each their own. But I just wear a beanie. Sometimes I just wear a hat. Again, I overheat. But getting back to the board, the Edge technology was fantastic. I really did like it. I heard some people, not like horror stories like that, but I heard some people saying that they thought the Edge technology with this wavy kind of edge with points stuck out, and they felt like it was a little catchy, and they actually prefer the older style, like my green board behind me, or just a normal standard parabolic arc of your board. Braided knife technology, or else they've actually mimicked it, and then they created their own names for it. And every company has their own name for the serrated knife version. GNU and LibTech just called serrated knife, and then again Jones leased or licensed out the patent from GNU and put it on this Jones Ultra Mountain Twin. It's not on every board for every manufacturer. I think GNU puts it on everything they have, but other manufacturers only put it on some of the higher up equipment that they're selling, such as SNFY. And again, different manufacturers call it something different, and different manufacturers might only have 3 contact points, some have 5, some have 7, and it might depend on the board that you're buying too, so just something to look out for. But I didn't feel it grabbing at all for me. Maybe once I start getting to hard pack conditions or ice, I might really feel a difference. Again, I've only been on the board for 1 day, so I can only review that one time. But the board itself, my overall pros and cons were terrific edge hold, absolutely amazing. I didn't slip, I didn't wash out. Some of the other boards, my GNU behind me actually even did it too towards the end of its lifespan. I started washing out my turns. I thought the edge was holding very well, and that's why I went to replace it. It was just kind of like, it was flopping around too much. It became a floppy fish. But I go to bite in, and my edge was slipping out constantly, so my tail would just slide out. And it wasn't my technique, because I know from just how I ride, I didn't just get bad overnight. The tail was actually just sliding. So you go to engage your turn, and then you just notice your back foot is just going whoop, and you just kind of spin around, and that's not good. So you want to be locked in on your turn, whatever angle you're trying to drive home. That's what angle the board should be driving you in and propelling you. And if it's your equipment's not doing that, then it's kind of like something you have to overcome. It's a flaw in how the equipment's performing. So this one was very locked in, especially again my ride style. My toe side edge is my strong edge. And when I get on my toe side edge, so these are the heel cups here, and when I'm driving the board kind of like the same direction I have it now, though not as aggressive, like I'm on this edge that's towards my desk, and my toes are down towards the snow. My boot was never touching. Again, I'm right at size 12 Solomon Malamute, and I never felt like my boots hit past the board length and hit the snow. I'm sure they made some contact here or there, but I never felt it. It never jerked me around, anything like that. So the width of the board was perfectly fine for a size 12 boot. I run 15 degrees on my front binding and somewhere between 0 and -9 on the back. I think I'm set to maybe -6 right now. I'd have to pull off the foot pad to see, but I think I ran it on -6. But I'll have to verify. For a long time, I ride my back binding on 0 because I'm mainly a carver, but I'm trying to get a little bit more comfortable with doing spins at slow speeds. And then this winter, if the conditions are good, I'll probably pick some days here or there, and I'll just commit the most of a full day just to riding switch because I want to get more comfortable riding in the opposite direction, i.e. goofy, a regular stance, so I ride left foot facing forward down the hill. So the overall width of the board was perfectly fine for a size 12 foot. I love the way the board felt. It's a very stiff board. I think it was somewhere between 8 or 9 on the flex rating out of 10 for most reviews. Depending on which website you go to, evo.com, thehouse.com, Jones itself, they all have different stiff rating flexes for boards because they're comparing them. And everyone a lot of people do like blind board tests, and they'll like the cover, the mask, the design of the board, and some people will ride it and then say how stiff it was. But a lot of times, I don't think that's a bad thing to do. But usually they're riding a lot of boards that day, and they're not always able to ride it enough to get like a solid takeaway, I think. But anyways, I don't do butters or anything like that. I just ride the boards pretty vanilla, and usually for speed. But I did not have a problem whatsoever on this board bombing hills. I probably clocked some of the fastest runs down the mountain on the runs I was doing of the day. I didn't see anyone going nearly as fast as I was or trying to, mainly because they're not trying to. I think there was a couple skiers that were going pretty fast, but I was passing all the snowboarders up left and right pretty easily. But most of them are probably more beginner intermediate, and I'm more advanced and somewhat expert. I'm probably more of somewhere between advanced and expert, somewhere in there. But anyways, yeah, definitely not pro or anything like that. But for most terrain, I can just jet down it. But anyways, so the board did perform really well. It was not a chatter day. It wasn't hard packed like that. So I didn't get to really test how much vibration was going to pass through the board. I didn't get on anything too crazy. It was my first run on the board, so I was really trying to protect the base. I was trying to stay away from a lot of the sketchy stuff because I didn't want to damage the base on my first day on the hill. But there was 0 vibration. And that starts to impact the bindings too. So between the now and drive bindings and the board itself, the materials that are in this board, there's some dampening materials, and then the binding technology I have, this is also very stiff binding, somewhere between the 8 and the 10 scale, depending on how you rate them. There was no vibration I ever felt going into my feet. One thing I didn't do is I didn't do any jumps. I was just carving and riding down the mountain. But this board absolutely performed very well. And I didn't have to deal with any vibration or energy transfer in a negative way. So in that regard, it was 10 out of 10. I thought it was awesome. But again, it was just a spring skiing kind of groomer day, so it wasn't too bad. My first run that I did, I actually took the, gosh, I don't have the chair lift up on it, but I went up to the crest of the mountain up top on the peak and came down. I should have done that actually because it was all new equipment and I haven't been snowboarding for 2 years. So I took it wasn't the crest chair. It was the cornice chair. So I took the cornice chair all the way up to the top and traversed that kind of top ridge up there. You kind of seeing all the way to the right from where the chair was. And I was kind of following some of the traffic over there. Like half went down immediately and the half was going along the ridge. So I kind of want to go across the ridge anyways just to stay on the board for a little bit and just kind of move it around to get comfortable with it. I shouldn't have been up there my first one, I'll be honest, because it's been so long, and again, I'm all new equipment. But I was mainly worried about my boots, not so much the board and the bindings. But I'll talk about that a little bit later. But anyways, so I got down the hill just fine. I took one header in powder, but it was a double black diamond run. Good powder, really good conditions, but heavy moguls, like really, really big moguls, double black diamond straight going down, and there's no gimmies. You're basically going through it all the way down. And again, the 159 was a little bit more nimble compared to my 162 or 163, so I was thankful for that. That was nice. And powdery moguls, having a little shorter board is a little bit more playful and easy to whip around. The longer you get, it's kind of harder. You start running over the top of moguls. It's hard to get your tail, and so you're tipped through the front of the mogul without your tail catching and flipping you over. So the shorter board actually was a little bit easier to transfer, but for the most part I was kind of leafing down, just getting used to the board. I did sink the tip when I was traversing across on one. I got a little bit of speed that I wasn't anticipating, and again I was just warming up, and it's been a while, and I wasn't really ready to engage my turns yet, but my tip did go straight into kind of a powered mogul and flip me over on my head. I just landed powder, it's no big deal, but it was probably fine, but it was just kind of funny. I wasn't expecting that, but that wasn't the board. Again, it's a shorter board, so your tip won't kind of scoop up as much. Some of the boards have like a shovel front or spooned out, so it actually kind of floats more. This one came over one mogul, and then my board was face down, and I just spiked it and flipped over. It was no big deal. Is my line and my bad riding, not the board. But anyways, so beyond that is just a groomer day, but it can handle everything. So this is a really stiff board, 159, and it can absolutely bomb. So depending on what you're looking for, this thing can handle a lot of different terrain. I thought it could maneuver really well. I was kind of testing towards the end of the day how quickly I could go toe to hillside edge and whip the board around, and it can just jam. Just boop, 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 boop. And it was really fun doing that. I could just my calves and shins are a little sore now from just doing that. It's not the best technique, but I was just testing how fast I could kind of get from edge to edge, and it's a very nimble board, more than I was expecting. And maybe that's just the board length. It's not as much material. Again, it is a wide format too, but it is very quick from tip to tail if you know what you're doing, and it doesn't fight you. So the one thing I thought was amazing about this board, and it again ties into the bindings as well, was energy transfer. The more you give this board, the more it gives you back, and that was amazing. My GNU stopped doing that. It did when I first got it for a few years. Then past that, it steadily winded down. That's probably all boards. But this board, especially on my toe side edge, it felt like I had rocket fuel on a couple of my turns. And when I would actually bend my knees and get into my toe side edge, this thing absolutely bites into the snow on this edge technology and takes off. It's just like somebody pushes you from behind, and all of a sudden you're going 5-10 miles an hour faster. So I thought that was absolutely fantastic, and it was more than I was expecting. I was expecting the board to hold an edge really well and hold a carve. I was not expecting to get so much energy back from the board to really drive your turn, and it felt amazing. It actually really is a really satisfying feeling when you bit down or trying to hold an edge and make a good carve, and then it's actually helping you in what you're trying to achieve. Nothing negative to say about the board whatsoever. I didn't test it on jumps or anything like that. So from a stiff flex rating, I don't do butters. I don't really. I did do a few slow spins. It is able to be ridden both. It's a bidirectional board, so you can ride it forward or backwards. Goofy or regular stance, whichever way. Again, Ultra Mountain twin. So it is a true twin in that regard. I was doing some slow spins down towards the bottom of the runs and towards the chairlift, just to kind of feel that out, but I didn't ride switch at all, so I wouldn't really call that switch. I was just doing spins. But it's fully capable of doing that if that's your jam. You can fully ride this at speed in switch stance, no problem, and I'm going to be building up towards that. I'll probably post some videos of it. It's going to look really funny because I can actually, I can keep up with most skiers on a snowboard, and I'm really fast on a snowboard, but if I'm running switch, it's going to look like I'm a complete beginner, and I'll be falling left and right. So it's going to be funny seeing that dichotomy of the stuff I post here soon. And I'm sure I'll be doing some switch days, and it's not going to look like the same rider is on the board. I'm just not used to the weight transfer or balance of that stuff. And it's kind of one of the things I want to test myself and try to get used to. And that's why I went with a little shorter board this year to be a little bit more playful. And I might pick up a second board that's more of a rocker board. This is a full camber. And so this board, I'm not sure if you can see it, but if I was going to lay this on my desk it's basically full camber. There's no rocker in the middle, and basically the rocker basically means that camber means there's space underneath the board between your feet. It's kind of hard to see because my table's not level, my camera's higher. The table's not level with the camera rather, but the board is concave. So it's camber is basically there's space underneath the board, underneath the feet, and then it's always making contact on the tip and tail. And then underneath the feet is spaced out. And then when you stand on the board, it's going to flatten out. But as soon as you hop off the board, it's going to pop back up again. And that's going to give it that flex and that energy and that drive. So when you stand on the board, it's really going to press down and engage. But otherwise, it's lifted up. And gosh, if you know anything about trucks, like a lot of lowboy or long haul trucks that they put equipment on have that same flex. So it's flexed like has a hip in the middle. And that's meant to where when you put it with load, it's going to flatten out. But as soon as it loads off it, it's going to pop back up. So it'll never sink like this. It's always, even under load, it's always flat. But as soon as it loads off of it, it's going to be popped back up again. So you have that energy underneath, and it really helps provide stability, power, and drive, and stiffness to the board for carving. So that's what a camber board's effectively doing. A rocker board's flat underneath, completely flat, and then actually lifts up under the feet and helps you spin. So it's going to be the opposite. So it's actually, and there's a lot of hybrids that do both, the best of both worlds, and a lot of things like that. And you'll hear a lot of guys saying it's camber, or rocker, camber, rocker, and those kind of things. But this board, for the most part, is a camber board fully. And a lot of boards will be rocker underneath the base of the board in between your feet. And those are more your freestyle boards, and those are more playful boards, and they help you spin. So that way you can butter those, you can lift them up on one tip or tail. This one is a camber board, and it is not going to be that same design. So it's meant to be for carving for the most part, and embalming. And it's not meant for as much for freestyle. It can do freestyle, but it's a much more stiff flex, more of a large freestyle board. So probably larger hits at speed. This thing will handle the impact really well and take the landings, whereas it's not as nimble, and it can kind of buck you. We'll say like one thing, I was in the trees for a little bit in the beginning of the day, and I had like a little short kind of entry point, and then it had a quick upswing, and the board kind of bucked me. I didn't fall, but it kind of threw off my balance because the board's so stiff. When you go down and very quickly, it pop up in these very quick angles. This board does not flex through those. It flexes, but again, it's going to drive that power, and it's going to whip. So, or not whip, it's going to like really pop out of it, and like you'll bounce back out. So the board is going to go pop back to its original shape immediately, and it's going to throw that energy through your body. So it's really hard to absorb that on a very stiff board like this. So that's one thing just to watch out for. This board isn't necessarily meant for those quick kind of like shape changes, because really it's going to always go back to its normal shape, like really fast, and whip energy through your body. So just something to watch out for. Usually this is going to be more of a standard kind of ramp jump, and it'll just throw you with a lot of energy, and it'll take the landing really well. But anything that's really quick or like spooned out, this board is going to have a little bit harder time kind of launching through that, and you're going to have a harder time keeping your balance. Anyways, all right, so that's the Jones Mountain Twin, or sorry, Jones Ultra Mountain Twin. There is a Mountain Twin, but it's this is a stiffer board. It has higher technology in it that's going to be a stiffer flex rating. And the standard twin is a little bit more freestyle oriented. Not a full freestyle board. It's more of an all mountain board, but more freestyle oriented than this version. I think it has colors in it too. So this one's the Ultra Mountain Twin. It's pretty much tan or like some kind of like off-white coloring through the middle in this design. The Ultra Mountain Twin, I think, is red or blue or green. I think it has more coloring than this board does. FY. All right, the bindings. The now dry binding. I have never had a nail binding before. I'll kind of tilt down so you can see these. I guess I'll aim it at, which one is this? Kind of show you this guy. So this binding here, get my mic in the camera, sorry. So this is the now dry binding, and it's pretty much a standard black binding look, you know, nothing crazy, but it's very stiff. And let's see if I can tilt that more. But it's so the binding itself, I try to match up the binding with the boot. I'm sorry, with my boots and my board. So that way it's going to be a very similar ride throughout. So the The binding has a skate technology in the middle, which is the first binding I've ever had that. If you're not familiar with it, basically what it does is it rocks a little bit and pivots from tip to tail, tip to heel. So when you're engaging your turns, it's going to help give you leverage on your tip and really drive your turns. And I was a little bit worried if I was going to feel movement in that. And maybe I can change the flex of this with this little bolt here. I'll maybe need to read the directions more if that's what you're intended to do, is to loosen that up. I haven't changed it. It's whatever came default from now is what I have it as. Maybe if you unlock this more, you can put more flex in it to where it rocks more on the board. But I just have it as the default kind of setting, however that is. And but yeah, I think that's part of why I felt like I was really driving my toe side turns, is part of this skate technology in here that's really allowing the binding to pivot, get up over on your edges on your rails, and really power through your turns. So that was pretty amazing, actually. And when I was reading reviews on it, I didn't know how to take it. So they started saying like your actual binding's going to move on the board. I've never been on anything like that. I've always been on equipment that's going to ride. It's going to ride very locked in, steady, no movement. Like if you're skiing or snowboarding for a long time, you pretty much want no movement in any of your equipment. You want all of your equipment to basically be locked in, loaded, and completely secure. That's more for free riding or hard riding. If you're doing freestyle stuff, I think some of those guys like a little bit of wiggle room for whatever reason. Maybe it's for the impacts or whatnot. But for me, when you start getting higher and higher up on the mountain, usually you're more concerned with responsiveness and safety, and you want your equipment to be operating and turning exactly what you want it to. You don't want it to be trying to engage a heel side or a toe side turn and the equipment failing you or being responding too late, and there being any kind of delay between your brain, your body, and your board. You want it to be all in unison and everything firing on that synapse, right away. So I need to hit my toe side turn, and it needs to happen like really fast, and that's what you're going for. The heel cups on the bindings is new to me, but they're not new to snowboard technology. I just have never had a binding. I think Burton came out with the toe cup design, and actually funny, kind of something here. Since all my other bindings were just strapped over the top and putting that pressure point over the top of the toes. Actually, the first time I wanted to put the binding on, I did do that out of bad habit. So actually, it dawned on me, hey, because I was actually having pain. I'll get to some of the pain stuff I had early on with the boots here in a second. Not a bad thing, but just in general, it's different pressure points. But so putting it over the toe of the boot was one of the takeaways, but not new. What does have a toe cup? It's kind of hard to see here, but this piece goes over the toe of the boot, not on top of the boot. It doesn't press down, it actually just cups. And that's a lot of bindings have the same technology. It's nothing unique to this now dry binding. But this is stiff flex binding rating, and the ratchets worked as well as you would expect, for binding. These are about $350, I think. The binding is kind of a cool looking binding. It comes in different finishes. I think the other one was red and black. I'll kind of flip this around so you can see it. That's what the back of the binding looks like there against the now dry binding. And all right, buddy, stay down. I want to hit you. And I'll be honest, I didn't notice them at all in a negative way, and that's a good thing because they were locked in. They performed their job. I already adjusted all the. One thing I'd say you need to do probably, just from a tips and tricks standpoint, is obviously you want to dial in your stance of your board, of the width of how you want your. I go a little bit wider than I think some people. I see some people ride really narrow in their stance between their left and right foot, so they ride kind of like in here. And I don't like I ride tall already, so I think I put my bindings maybe one screw set over, so that way I'm actually in a little bit wider stance just to combat some of my normal bad tendencies, which is I ride pretty tall a lot of times. And I see a lot of people talking about it's better to be really in that hunched over like catcher stance, like really bent down at the knee, like 45-degree angle at the knee, really engaged in your turns. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I just personally, that's not how I ride from a natural kind of standpoint. I ride more of like tall with a little bit of a bend, And then when I really am trying to get into a turn, I'll bend down and engage, but I don't ride like that from top to bottom. And just for better or worse, just trying to be honest about my techniques and my habits. That's how I ride. But yeah, the one thing I did do on the bunnies was on the toe side straps, they have these little, and a lot of bunnies have these things. They have a little quick release here. Well, it's not really a quick release, but basically it pops up in a little screw, and you can twist off the screw, the nut that's holding the binding on this set piece. And there's little, let's see if you guys can see it. There's little, yeah, you can see it better right there. All right, and there's little holes there on that binding strap to where you can actually move the binding and rotate around the boot. So you can adjust this toe strap. And same thing with the heel right here, same thing. And you can adjust these straps to be oriented so they're positioned evenly on your boot. So if you're feeling like pressure points or like that, most bindings have this, but these ones are designed well. And it's really easy to just untwist those and move the screw, set it back into a different spot, and adjust it compared to your boot. And the easiest thing you want to do is just when you get a pair of boots or you get these bindings or any pair of bindings, because again most will have this technology, is put the boot inside the binding and then kind of see where it lines up once you have the binding inside of the boot. The boot inside the binding. And then that way you can adjust the strap compared to the boot, because a lot of the boots are contoured differently. This one is pretty standard, but a lot like a Vans. A Vans has a really thick, I noticed I was about to buy Vans boots, and but Vans stick out like a little bit more here. And they're just a little bit wider for whatever reason. They have a large bulk to them. And I already have a size 12 foot, so that wasn't the decision on why to get Vans, but the binding will sit out further on a Vans boot, and you'd have to maybe position the straps a little differently to kind of evenly apply pressure and tension towards your boot based on the shape of the boot. So F1, and the reason why you want to do that is to apply even pressure to avoid pressure points, any kind of weird tension that's on your body. You want it to be pretty evenly across. So just looking at that ahead of time will save you a little bit of pain or discomfort while you're on the mountain. So it's just something to be aware of. But overall, I didn't really notice the bindings at all throughout the day. Very comfortable. Again, there was no negative energy transfer from the snow through the board, through the binding to my boots. And there's technology in all three. So these Malamutes also have technology that dampens impacts and vibration. So between the boots, the bindings, and the snowboard, all three have vibration dampening technology that's embedded in them. And nothing was passed up to my feet and my knees. So I'll give credit to all three that they all performed extremely well. But it wasn't an overly challenging day. It was just pretty much a spring groomer. But the bindings were locked in. They responded really well. They never gave out discomfort in my foot, but it wasn't due to the expectations are regarding snow equipment, regarding comfort levels with equipment. And I'll get onto that in a second. But overall, in the now dry binding, again with bindings, there's not as much to talk about. They're more of just an efficiency and a function standpoint. But those are the two main things. To change your settings, you actually pull up this footbed underneath, and they have videos up on Now's website, and you just pull the footbed up from the back, it lifts up, and you can change the base plate around. That's a little different. I felt like I was going to rip the foam when I first was doing all that. I'm not comfortable doing this. I hope this isn't going to break it. So just as an FYI from a design, there's not really an up arrow on the back. I watched the video, and that's what they showed you doing. It's like, okay. And you just pop up and it lifts up. But it's a little weird for some of you to do that on the Now binding. And the one thing I'm worried about on the long term is I'm sure at some point it's going to create a crease in this footbed when you're doing that so much. It basically has like it's not rubber, but it has like this footbed, and it's for vibrational multifunction. But when you're opening up the footbed forward or up, it's putting a crease on this footbed while you're working on the base plate. So like, I wouldn't do that for fun. Like, unless you want to change it, just leave it as is, because I feel like over time you might damage your footbed, and it might be able to get replaced. I'm not sure how you pull it off the front. I haven't looked into that, but that's the only thing I'd really look at the design elements of this, is that it's not two pieces, it's once. And actually I already have a little bit of, I've only lifted up one time, and I do have a little bit of a crease going across the footbed from doing that. So that would be my only real critique on this. Is I imagine at some point it might make more sense if they go to like a modular design where they can pop out or slide out, or some kind of other design where it's like in pieces to where you can unhook them or detach. without having to damage them to operate the equipment. So that's my only critique on the now dry binding. It performs really well. No problems with it, whatever. I felt like it was an addition to my set, not a subtraction or a detractor. So they were fantastic. And again, I challenged the equipment because I ride pretty hard, and nothing fell out of sync, or there's no movement in them whatsoever. So they were locked in and kept me really secure. But that's the only critique I have is regarding the kind of design element of them. And that's more of like a longevity or durability for the parts, is that if you're constantly lifting that footbed up to access the base plate to move around your settings for powder day, for groomer day, for Elmerite switch day, for whatever, I think that crease is just going to keep forming. And at some point, it might crack and be like a failure point if it's kind of worn out too much. And maybe that's an easily replaced part. I'm not aware, so maybe it is. And if it is an easily replaced part, no big deal. But I could see people having to take down their now dry bindings to do replacements. And hopefully you wouldn't damage your binding if it's not a replaceable part and have to get new bindings just because this piece of like a rubber sole down here is worn out. And so again, I don't know. So just something to be aware of regarding their design. But overall, straps, ratchets, function, performance, top marks. All right, so that's enough on the board and the bindings. I'm going to talk about the boots here for a second, and then I'll probably end the stream. But let me set this aside, and then I'll talk about these Solon boots. All right, so it wasn't a muddy day, guys. Sorry for the little dirt on the boot there. It was again a warm day, so it was muddy in the parking lot. And when I was walking back, when I'll talk about walking, I'm glad I brought that up here in a second. So the Solomon Malamute, it's a stiff rating, I think, on their website of a 9, somewhere around a 9. Don't quote me on that, but it's a very stiff boot. If you look up stiff boots, this is one of the stiffer boots in the market, in the industry for going on 15, 20 years, the Solomon Malamute. Why did I go with the Solomon Malamute? Again, my riding style. So I tend to be a bomber. I tend to just ride top to bottom very vertically. I grew up riding some local mountains in Southern California, but also I went to Mammoth about 100 times. Mammoth is a very massive, massive mountain. And I don't know if it's known for it, but in my mind, because I've ridden it so many times, has long, long groomers, and they're like highways. You hop on one of these things, and it's a steep blue, and you can go as fast as your equipment can handle it. And you can really lay out your turns and rely on that the next turn or over the crest of the hill or the next run that you're going to tie into is going to be the same for the most part. And so you can really build up a lot of speed and connect your turns and really have a lot of security that they're and so anyways, that's probably where I grew up. From my family, I used to race my dad a lot and my sister as well. And I was slower than my dad, but like on some, I think the only time I beat him probably, if I was going to be honest, I could beat him. But it's usually because, and this is when I was really a kid, and I wasn't on a snowboard, I was on skis. I can't catch him on my snowboard really. I can keep up with him, but if it's on the straightaway or else I'm not turning on a snowboard, he can't beat me on skis. We're at the same speed. It's been a few years, but we're the same speed. And but if there's any turns when I engage on snowboard, you lose more speed in snowboard turns than you do on a pair of skis, and it just doesn't. On skis, there's a way you can lean to turns to where you don't actually slide out as much. And it might be my equipment too, but so I'd love to try him again. He's getting older, so I don't think it'll be a fair test now. He's pushing high 60s, so I don't think he wants to go that fast anymore. But anyways, but I grew up kind of racing and doing those kind of things on ski and snowboard equipment, going really fast. I used to be kind of like the rebel kid that would kind of ski under slow signs and those kind of things. Not saying for like good or bad. I'm just saying I grew up kind of disobeying slow signs on ski equipment and just going as fast as I could with some level of safety involved. But like really, I just love to rip mountains. So when I was skiing, I grew up kind of being a hard charger, and then we did a lot of tree skiing too. So I love doing that. But I think part of that has translated to my snowboard. The way I ride snowboards too is just that's the way I'm usually riding up and down mountains is in that style. So when shifted to snowboarding, I was looking for equipment that could handle that riding style, which meant stiffer equipment that was meant for more high-speed carving. So that's kind of where that comes from. Anyways, so the Salomon Malamute. So why Salomon Malamute? Because again, I need a stiff boot because I ride pretty hard. Out of all the pieces of equipment that I could handle, that if there was something that would probably be a little bit less, the board needs to be stiff to handle it. The binding needs to be very secure. I could probably give a little bit there. Probably didn't need to go for as hardcore a binding as I got. But the boot is probably after the bindings. This is the next one. You could probably get away with not being completely as stiff and being a little bit more comfortable. But I tried the full stiff boot because I've never had one in a snowboard boot before. I've had plenty of ski boots that I've rented over the years. I've never owned a pair of ski boots myself because I was mainly doing it when I was under 18. I was skiing a lot, but I was always renting back then. And that's probably always the intermediate stuff. They usually don't rent you very stiff equipment, but a lot of uncomfortable ski boots. But my foot shape, whatever it was, I was always pretty okay with them. But I'm used to a lot of somewhat foot pain and pressure point, and kind of like you get some numbness in ski boots. In this snowboard boot, I didn't get numbness so much that I wasn't ratcheted down the whole way. But in the Salomon Malamute, sorry, it's kind of hard to see. This thing is really dark. And it has some kind of like different material on there. It kind of shines a little bit. But the Malamute, and this is meant for this ribbon back here that's going up the side of the boot, is meant to keep it stiff. This holds like stiff flex, and that's why it's going in different shapes. The whole like lateral flex. So this thing is not meant to flex at all. It's meant to be really locked in, tight, and stay put. So it's not supposed to be moving much, and that's what that's all about. But the boot itself is very good. The quality of this boot is exceptional. It performs and delivers what you're expecting when you buy this boot. If you're looking for a stiff snowboard boot to drive responsiveness and really perform what you're expecting of it, and you're doing a hard charging type steep carves, high speed riding, anything like that, this is an awesome choice. So from a quality standpoint, the Salomon Malamute, high marks. Again, it was just ridden for one day, so I'm just going to really talk about the pros and cons. All right, so some tips and tricks regarding the Salomon Malamute. When you're walking to and from the resort, or just walking around and not on your board, I would say two things I would provide tips for. So this is a BOA system that's locked in, more of these, but the BOA system right here locks in these. Each of these eyelets will lock in on both sides, and so you can ratchet in all the way up 3 points, so 1, 2, and 3, and then again right here on the 4th spot. And these both of the BOA system cords are going to connect to this, and they're going to pop in place. And then at that point, it's meant right here to where it's not going to give out tension throughout your run or throughout the day. It's locked in, and you can pull it and cinch it up more, but it will not go down. So during your run on my old boots, the BOA system, you would constantly lose tension in your upper half of your boot. This boot is designed not to do that. So one of the flaws of the older styles boots, or boots that aren't as well made as this one, is you will gain flex throughout your runs, and you'll keep having to retighten them. So you'll be pulling up your little pant skirt at the bottom of your heel to get access to this, and then tightening this again, kind of repositioning again to where it's stiff throughout the day for you, and you're able to move. Otherwise, your top half of your boot, your shin is going to be driving through the top because it's become more flexible, and you'll have more movement through, and it won't be as responsive. So your body will be saying, I want to turn, and then the boot's saying, I'm flexing, and then you finally turn once you get enough inverted on your toes. But when this thing's fully stiff, now when you go to drive, your knee goes to bend, and then you start to tip over. It's more happening in unison, and you're very quick, again, like I was saying, like whippy on tip to tail, because that's all your equipment's made for the same thing. If you had a softer boot, there would be more energy transfer and movement in your equipment, and then even the boots, the board might be great and really fast, nimble tip to tail, or tip to heel rather, I keep saying tip to tail, toe to heel, and your bindings are very reactive and can drive that energy toe to heel again. If your boot's soft boot or soft flex boot, it won't drive the power and energy of your body's delivery. Again, your mind's saying I want to turn, your body's saying I want to turn, but you're flexing through the front of the top, the upper, and then that's going to be delayed movement and energy transfer to the boot to the binding where it has strapped on, and then eventually to the board to where you're going to turn. So you're going to say, oh man, my equipment, or there's lag, there's unresponsiveness, it's not delivering the power I'm I'm having a hard time turning on the steep terrain. I keep falling or having a hard time with it. It might not even be your technique all the time. Sometimes it is the equipment that isn't as performing up to what you're trying to accomplish. So for me, I went with a group of equipment that was all meant for the same function: hard charging, high speed carving, stiff flex rating on everything throughout. So that way mind, body, equipment is all lined up to perform and go toe to heel, toe to heel, toe to heel, exactly when you need it or want it to. So that's why the Solomon Malamute. There were other options. I was looking at Vans. Gosh, I'm going to get the name wrong. I'm not sure if it's a hi-fi, but they had two different boots I was looking at. But one was their Pro model, and I thought it was a really cool looking boot. I actually liked the look of it more than this. It was a really neat looking boot, and I'll probably link that one below too, but I didn't try it on. And I was a little nervous. I actually went to a place to try on a pair, and they didn't have them. Actually, I went to two different shops. One was Bobo's in town in Reno, but they didn't have them. But I was actually wanting to try a pair of Vans on. I heard really good things from a comfort standpoint on the boot, and they had a much different design and boa system. I think they're more of a hybrid, and they had some different straps and ways to provide stiffness, and a lot of different options internally in the boot that were adjustable. So I'll kind of show you this one, and then you guys can get a feel for it. So. So a lot of straps here, and sorry that's kind of connected right now, but this is the footbed, or the inside liner. Not footbed, the inside liner. The footbed I'll show you here too. I want to replace these. I'll probably get corks at some point. This is the foot liner. It's very flimsy. For my opinion, almost all of these, I've never seen a pair of ski boots, snowboard boots at all. As far as these go that are made with boots, I'm sure they're just fine and they're adequate, but almost all of these should be replaced at some point, in my opinion. These aren't extremely comfortable or provide a ton of comfort inside of the liner for your foot, and they're very spongy and they don't hold up extremely well. So they're adequate, but again, if I was going to replace anything on the boots from an accessory standpoint, one of the first things I do for my gear is I probably put some cork beds in these to provide a little bit more performance, and actually they're a little bit more shaped towards your foot. These are heat moldable boots. Most are nowadays. They're at least the higher end. Just flimsy stuff, like a lot of these foot liners or inside liners of these boots. It has stiff flex all the way throughout the mid and upper portions here. This is stiff material. And I'll talk about the pros and cons about that so you guys are aware. But this is, you can pull these out. So if you're getting too much flex, or I'm sorry, if you want more flex in your boot and you don't want so much stiffness throughout, you can pull out this red H here, the straps, and you just unhook it and from these little insert spots and pull this out. I didn't feel this at all inside the boot too much, but from like a paint standpoint, so it wasn't a negative for me. But it is providing stiffness laterally and around, really holding and providing shape to your Achilles heel to hold you inside the boot. So it's an FYI. This is what the foot liner looks like on Solomon Malamute boot looks like. And I want to say I had the 2021 boots, but I'll have to verify. I got these ones from evo.com. The foot liner also has a locking system, and I'll kind of show you what that looks like so you can see it. And that's standard. It also has a boa inside, so the liner has a boa you're going to cinch up, which is very common on a lot of Solomon boots. So you're going to use the boa system to cinch up the inside liner, and then it has a locking mechanism to where you can lock it in place. So then that way, this boa system, once you have it where you want, you lock it so it won't lose, again, it won't lose flex throughout your runs, and it'll stay as tight as you cinch it up. So as tight as you want, you can tighten it up and then lock it in place, and you're good to go. So it's not going to be unwinding throughout the day, and you won't have to keep on, again, pulling your pant leg up, opening up the front of your boot, tightening this thing up. And a lot of boots, especially the pair I had from like 10 years ago, it didn't have this locking mechanism, so I was constantly having to do that. If I wanted to, regain stiffness, I'd have to do that again. So as an FYI, these liners have a really good technology on that. Stiffness here overall, really nice materials. I can't compare them to other makes. Different Vans materials, or there's a ton of different boot manufacturers out there. I'm sure a lot of them make similar products that are of high quality, but this one I can say is a very nice liner, overall quality. The footbed, if I was going to replace anything, it would be this footbed. Is probably it's probably high end and perfectly adequate compared to all the other ones that they put in there as well. I'm not saying anyone does better than this, but again, I just had corks on my last pair of boots, and I did enjoy those. So if I was going to replace anything on my setup, it'd probably be these footbeds. I'd probably go with a little bit higher end of aftermarket product for these. But otherwise, just the boots themselves, from a quality standpoint, are fantastic. These liners are really comfortable, and I enjoyed them a lot. One thing I will say about the boots, and talking about pros and cons, so I whipped out some pros right there. Well, let me talk about some more. So, Boots Flex overall, again, delivers exactly what it's going to do. It's going to be a stiff boot, drive performance oriented. It really helps you go fast and gauge your turns. And wherever you're trying to go, this will help you get there. And there's no movement whatsoever. So I never felt like the boot was moving around, either in the binding or my foot was moving around in the boot. You are really locked in. I mean, like prison shackle locked in. You have this thing ankle brace locked around you, and you're ready to go. It's like ready for takeoff, kind of locked in kind of feeling when you're inside these boots. But again, I ratchet them up. If you don't ratchet them up hard and you keep everything really loose and towards that mid, more of a mid flex, you can adjust the flex rating of the equipment just by not ratcheting everything up so hard. I tend to ratchet everything up really tight, so I'm really locked in. So again, that's how I ride. You can ride it looser, then the boot's going to feel different. It'll have a lot more wiggle and room inside. I wouldn't recommend that because I feel like if you're buying this stuff, you really want responsive equipment. So strap it down. But to each their own. And so getting on that, I did loosen up the bindings in a few different spots, and I'll talk about why I did that. But because all the equipment is pretty stiff that I'm running with the now drive binding and the board itself and this boot, and I do mostly, I'm not on any greens throughout the day. I'm pretty much on some harder blues and blacks and double blacks. Yesterday I was pretty much on blues and blacks, but I did one double black to start the day, but then I didn't get back up there again just because I was trying to really test the equipment and learn the equipment and get used to riding again. So I was mainly on blues and blacks. But I did have foot pain right away. So the first not when I first got in the boots, I did ratchet everything down in my boots and then walk to the resort. So what I would do differently from a tips and tricks standpoint is don't do that. So I would keep everything loose on your upper, on the outside and the liner. So I would keep these, you can tighten your liner, I guess, if you want to, but I keep everything pretty loose and then walk to the resort kind of like half tightened. And that way there's a little bit more room in the boot when you're walking. You don't want it to be falling off, but if you're walking like a mile in these boots, they are not comfortable. So from a con standpoint, these are not your walking boot. My last pair of Solomon boots, I could have walked 10 miles in those things. They were so effing comfortable. I don't know what the hell was about them. They were more of that mid-flex freestyle oriented boot, and I got them when I worked for Sport Chalet way back in the day, and from their pro deals. Sport Chalet is no longer in business, but anyways. But this one is a much stiffer boot, and it is not comfortable to walk in for any distances being strapped in. I mean, you can walk to your car and you'll make it. I did both ways. I walked both ways locked in. To start my day and to end my day, I was completely locked. I didn't loosen up the boots, and I was feeling pain in my feet. Not like I'm just used to, again, there being some, just from growing up skiing, I'm used to being some numbness in my feet, some pain in my feet, those kind of things. That's just part of skiing. Most skiers I've always been around, always, especially the ones that are more of a hard charger, for whatever reason, you always are downsizing your boot size, and there's always pain there. And I don't know why skiers do that, because your ski boot size, I don't know why people do that in a ski boot. For a snowboard boot, you're trying to avoid edge drag and make sure your foot is fitting over the lateral waist of the board. But on skis, I don't know why people do that, because your boot's going with the ski length, so it doesn't matter. The width of the ski, or the ski boot, is pretty much the width of the ski boot. So I don't know why they downsize ski boots. I think people just get used to doing that from like a older generation, but they should probably just wear their normal ski boot size. And I think that they're doing that mainly for responsiveness, because if you have too much wiggle room in your boot is the main thing up front. Like in a shoe, you get like a little bit larger, so I'm a 13, but probably actually a 12 and a half. So maybe getting rid of that wiggle room helps lock in your turns. So that's what I think that they're probably doing for cars. But it's a little different in the ski boot or the snowboard boots. The snowboard boots, you're really just doing it for to make sure you're fitting on your board and you're not going to get drag. All right, so from the Collins standpoint, I would definitely loosen up the boot, at least on the liner and the shell of the boot itself, and not fully lock it in. You get your lift ticket, you get up to your first chair, then start strapping everything in. Yes, it'll take a few more minutes once you're actually out there and everyone's gonna be ready to go and you're still strapping your stuff in, but you'll avoid some foot pains. And just take it from me, I would do that. I wasn't in like incredible amount of pain, but it was very discomforting, and I wish I actually had done that. It would have been a little bit more of an enjoyable before and after to my day by not doing that. And I actually didn't notice it too much when I was walking there. It was just a stiff, and I was kind of like clunking around. But I think it helped kind of like do some chafing stuff, and I'll talk about here now. So the other con was when I had everything locked in, because I really locked in the boot because I wanted responsiveness. I started to get some foot pain, just being locked in the binding plus the boot. Almost immediately when I was got off the chairlift up top on the double black, I was up there on the crest of the mountain, and I went to start getting locked in. I was having pain almost immediately when I locked in my binding. There was pain. I had my binding always ratcheted down as well. I did ratchet over the top, and I should have been doing the toe cup. That might have been part of it, but I still had some pain throughout the day, even after I changed that. And so what I started doing is more of that skier kind of tip and trick. Is I started unbuckling my bindings and keeping them really loose once I got down to the bottom of the chairlift, and then riding all the way up. And that way my feet got a break. They were still locked in completely in the boots. I didn't loosen these up at all throughout the day, but the pressure from the binding was relaxed when I was waiting in the line for the chairlift, or then going up to the top. And then I get to the top and I ratchet the bindings back down, and then for responsiveness. So that's what I was doing. I'll probably do that every day I ever ride these. That's probably something I'll have to do. But one thing I'll say about my older equipment, I didn't really do that. But it was more of a loose flex on my boot, and the binding wasn't extremely as stiff either. The straps were more flexible, so I never got any of that pressure point stuff going out through all the boots. Always 100% super comfortable, never any pain points, mainly a little bit of pain, discomfort, and pressure going through it. My instep, so right here, I have a little bit of chafing, soreness, and redness on both feet. Mainly my right. Maybe that's because my feet and my body isn't used to snowboarding. I've been for a couple of years, but when I was riding, you do a kind of little bit of a leaning on both sides of your feet, because you're putting pressure on. Especially that's why my right's probably a little bit more short than my left, but I'm putting more pressure because I'm leaning forward. So when you're snowboarding, you're supposed to be leaning or a little bit more of your weight transfer, like 60-40, 65-33. You're supposed to be a little bit more forward leaning, and I do that because, again, I ride fast. So I'm leaning forward down the mountain. And I think part of that, it wore on the front of my foot. I don't know if that's the boot yet, or just because I haven't been riding in a couple of years. I'm going to take that as a wash and saying it's because I haven't been riding for a couple of years and my body's not acclimated. So I'm not going to count that as a knock on the boot, but just kind of result of the day. That's what I came away with. That instep was a little bit worn out and sore. I actually feel good. So 24 hours, a little bit over 24 hours from riding yesterday, I feel fine. They're not beat up. I'm perfectly okay. But it's definitely a sore spot. When I was walking back, I wanted it out of the boot. So I should have actually loosened it up. But when I was walking back to the car, I was kind of walking back in discomfort the whole way. It's about a mile. But just as an FYI, my takeaways. Overall, I was very satisfied with the boot. It does, and my expectations and performance review for the equipment is really that. It's based on performance. It's not so much based upon ideology. So like if you want like a comfortable boot through and through that will never bite at you at all, probably not it. This is more for the advanced person that's really looking for a stiff flex and really wants performance, and this thing will deliver on that. So it is delivering what it's intended for and what it's sold as, and what's it marketed as. It's an awesome boot. Very comfortable for the most part, especially if you're not completely ratcheting it down, but I do that. But again, I'm more oriented towards utility rather than comfort. And so if you're comfortable with that thought process, then this will give you the performance you're looking for. So that's where I'll end it with this stream. This has a lot of technology inside the boot. I haven't really mentioned dampness in the heel. Again, there's is money to spring day when I was walking back to the parking lot. And again, that little strip back here adding lateral flex to the boot. I'm sorry, removing the lateral flex through the boot, and it has a very stiff upper throughout. You are locked into this puppy, and again, you won't feel movement. It feels like a very durable material. The BOA system, I did hear some reviews of different BOA boots from Salomon that the strap was, or the BOA system itself, the cable was breaking, and people were having a bad day because now your boot's loose and you have to go somehow fix that. So pretty much your day's done. But I didn't see any negative reviews as to the Malamute about that. So they may use different cabling systems, which is probably likely because I know this boot has different ratchets than a lot of the other boots do have in the line. But very high-end materials were placed in this boot. And this one, I think, was somewhere between $400 to $500 for this pair of boots. And hopefully it lasts me a while. It's a stiffer boot in general, so it's not going to give out as nearly as quickly. So it should perform on that. But just as an FYI, overall I give it very high marks as well. My favorite things and aspects about the boot are the locking mechanisms on the eyelets. The center one here, which is hard to see, but there you go. It's this puppy right here. And both of these cables just pop in and snap in place. So you put it right here, and when you lock it, it'll do a little snap. I'm not really putting much pressure there, but that's what that does. You'll pull it up, lock it in, it'll still go up, but it'll never go back down. So you're locked in, and then the same thing with the liner. I really like the liner aspect right there where you can do this locking mechanism. It's a little bit different design, but same purpose inside. Another feature